Hello, welcome to the Gemini New Moon. And I'm back after quite a bit of a hiatus for me. Um, I usually love to do these updates every 2 weeks without missing a new moon or full moon. However, I've taken, I think, a couple months off at least now, but I had to do a lot of changing in that time. I've traveled at length. I've moved apartments. I've left a relationship. I have a new home. I've turned 40. So, I had to go into my little cocoon of disintegration and becoming. And certainly in there was some feelings of not living up to my obligations, but of course we know that's external imposed pressure. And so I just threw it up in the air and said, if it's not there for me, and this is kind of how I like to flow in general with my life, if the energy isn't there, then I don't do it. And I don't know when I'm going to come back. But here we are. It's a new moon in Gemini, and I am, of course, a Gemini. It's my season. And I'm happy to be back recording this session. So I'm going to pull up my transit chart here so that you can see what's going on in the sky at this moment. And then together we're going to take a look at this Gemini new moon and what is being asked of us at this time. Why do I say what is being asked of us? Because that's what the sun does. The sun and the moon, that's what they do. They shine their light, or they reflect light. So sun shines its light on. So it's kind of like taking a flashlight or using a laser pointer, right? I'm pointing at something on a chalkboard saying, that's what I want you to learn. Or reflecting something. This is very similar to, say, sitting in therapy, for example, having someone to reflect back to you what is kind of coming from inside of you when you give yourself that space to observe your inner life, right? So the sun and the moon act as projectors and reflectors at any given moment in perfect timing. When we sink into the sun and moon, we're sinking into this now moment. So we're aligning ourselves with the present moment. And that, of course, is, absolutely everything. Healing and harmony is found in the present moment because we are living in a harmonious system. And so when we align to the present moment, we find this empty space that we understand by being at peace in that void space. We understand it to be harmonious, right? There's a form of contentment or divine presence there. It's hard to explain. But if you've been there, you know. And by aligning with the sun and the moon, we align ourselves with the present moment. So let's look at what's going on right now, what the sun and the moon are doing to understand this Gemini new moon. So first thing to see here is that the moon and the sun are conjunct in the sky. So they're at the exact same degree point in the sky. And when that happens, we have a new moon. Okay. And then we look at the archetype sign. Well, it's in Gemini. So we have a new moon, that lunar phase in the archetype of Gemini. So then we can look from there and say, okay, what is a new moon? It's kind of like a pure or purity or of this archetype. It's innocent. It's new, kind of like a blank slate. There's a freshness to it, fresh start. And so because it's got this new energy, this new potential, right? Because it's new, it's got potential. That's why we like to set, people talk about setting intentions on the new moon. Not that it's magic and we want to tell the sun, the moon, okay, like do this for me. No, it's because it's a fresh, pure energy. It's a fresh start of a new cycle. we get to feel into the emptiness or the void or the freshness of that. It's like a blank slate. That's why it's exciting, is because there's nothing there and you get to just start on a blank canvas. When I say nothing there, I mean we're not carrying our shadows with us. That canvas isn't already painted black and blue and purple and we have to go in and like freshen it up. It is fresh. It is ready to begin. New beginnings is a big one. So that's the theme, or that's the cycle. Now, what is the archetype? It's in Gemini. What part of us is the Gemini part? Well, Gemini is the persona. It's the personal ego. It's the small self. It is the part of us that's a sibling, part of us that grew up in community, in a particular neighborhood. It's what we do every day, right? It's our everyday commute. It's also how we express who we are, right? So Gemini is this, like, you have a world of fun, interesting things and thoughts and all of the things inside of you, uniqueness. And how you express that and communicate that and move that through your body is your personal ego, right? So Gemini is the authentic self. We're going to say authentic self expressed, right? And in that, the authentic self, well, what are your interests? What do you know about? What do you like to learn? How do you like to communicate? How do you communicate, right? What do you think about? This is all Gemini things. Gemini is, if we look even more at the Gemini archetype, an air sign. So the air signs love to think, communicate. They're cerebral, right? Bringing in data and information. So all of this already gives us an idea about what this time of year for you is about. It's about finding that freshness, that blank state, and reaching for the highest potential, highest expression of your personal self or ego. And that's authentic expression. Kudos to me for writing and talking at the same time and kind of getting it right. So it's interesting, right, that I've taken time off of recording sessions and now I'm back during a Gemini new moon. I haven't had the energy. I haven't had that desire to take what I know and what's inside of me and what I like to teach and express, right, the air element, and to communicate it through my vessel, the Gemini, right? Until now, until a Gemini new moon. Because there's this feeling of free flowing, whatever, just go with it, right? Go with the flow. It's a mutable sign. It's a mutable sign. So it's spontaneous. It's not attached, right? So Geminis can think this or that. They can throw that out there or this, play devil's advocate, and they enjoy that kind of back and forth because they have a lot going on mentally that they're excited to share, but they're not necessarily attached to any income. So they can, this is why Geminis are called the chameleon or wearing the different masks, is because they can jump around into different opinions. I wear about 10 different outfits a day. Seriously, I just keep changing all day based on how I'm feeling. And that's a very Gemini thing. So Geminis are masters of transformation in the sense that, like, how I show up in my facial expression, what I wear, how I present myself, it changes based on the energy at hand at any given moment. Interesting, right? Because Geminis aren't necessarily thought of as like a super intuitive sign, but they're connected in this air element, right? They've got all of their senses out all the time, and they're masters at kind of sensing what's going on socially and around them. This is why Geminis are often considered like popular or witty or, you know, like that in school or in groups is because they're very socially tuned in, and they can kind of shapeshift to adapt to anyone. And they're also using their body as the vessel because their body is the avatar, right? That's a really key word for Gemini. And this is where we go deeper than surface level astrology, and we reach into like soul astrology. The spirit, right, comes down and incarnates from these upper realms, and when we appeal to our higher self, it feels like we're going up and out and channeling something. That's the feeling of spirit or the higher self. But the human is here with my boots on the ground, with my feet planted. There's no escaping the skin suit, right? And that's very Gemini. That's the bottom of the chart. That's where we're grounded in. And also through the incarnation process, soul chooses to come in to this very avatar. So Gemini New Moon is all about loving and getting to know your avatar really, really well. Especially on this path of spirituality, you can tend to escape and go out of your body and start to put energy and devotion and power into that which is outside of you. And you start to forget about or not value the ego and the avatar and this person that I am. But the truth about Gemini is that Gemini keeps you rooted and grounded. It means that everything that you acquire, that has to be lived through this body and communicated through this biology. So Gemini New Moon is a real coming home to yourself and knowing who you are moment. The signs that come before Gemini, Aries and Taurus, are more about like your survival and your foundation and your values that affect who you are. But it's in Gemini season that we really come back to, okay, who am I now after all of this growth? What are my new interests? Am I putting enough energy and intention into myself? Do I love myself? Do I communicate who I am authentically? Is there a gap between who I am on the inside, or the thoughts that I wish I could share, and what I'm actually, or how I'm actually sharing it? Right? So it's a coming home to yourself moment. And the other thing about Gemini is that, if we look at where it's at on the chart, it's here in the third house, right? And the third and fourth houses are the very bottom of the chart. So as much as Geminis, being an air sign, are seen to be like gregarious and social butterflies, they're also deeply private. And they love to have, a deep relationship and bond with their own brain, with learning, with crafts and hobbies, and their home life is really important to them. Those that know them best are often can be their like siblings and their neighborhood people that they grew up with, right? And that's like something that you can think of right away for this new moon is like, do I like who I am through the eyes of those people, or is who I am has who I am shifted or changed in a big way from those types of people? And that will show you your growth over the years, right? Because this Gemini is what we need to do is constantly level up our expression, or our authentic expression through this avatar based on what we've learned and how we've grown. And we have to make sure those two are always in like symbiosis, are always working with each other. If one group thinks that we're this and another group thinks that we're that based on how or where we showed up, then there's a bit of a disjunct, right? If part of you is still rejecting, if you're still rejecting part of you or part of your past or part of something, yet you're over here pretending to be a well put together person with, done all my shadow work. Well, again, there's a disjunct, right? And it's Gemini, the twins or the lovers, that want to bring those two together and kind of hold hands. And of course, at the end of the day, we're talking about these two parts of ourselves, right? It's our inner life and who we are, and then how we express that through the outside of us. So during this Gemini new moon, it's coming back to yourself. It's almost like a high school reunion, but you're coming back home to yourself. It's a homecoming this time every year. How much have I grown and changed in the last year? And it's easy to work in 1 year cycles because you can go directly back to this time last year, but you can also look at this time 2 years ago or 5 years or 10 years ago. As still in Gemini season, then you're going to get the repeating cycles. It's a life forces you to come back home to yourself moment. And what are you doing at this time of year? And do you feel like you're honoring the avatar, you're honoring yourself and your life? And or what needs to adjust, what needs to shift, and kind of, again, Gemini's that mutable sign. It's not too afraid of change, right? Okay, I need to adjust. Personally, I've gone through a lot of, in this Sagittarian full moon, which just preceded this new moon, I've gone through a lot of small communication things, like because the full moon brings up kind of triggers and adversities. So seeing triggers that are still present, seeing reactions, seeing personal defense systems I have in place, moving into this Gemini season, I'm going to adjust in me those small parts of myself that need updating based on what I saw in that full moon cycle, right? So was I reactive? Was I defensive? What was it about? What happens this time of every year? What are my personal blind spots or wounds that come up this time of year? And how do I now want to focus so much on me and come home to myself and say, okay, I've grown a lot. Is my programming up to date with the growth of this year? And this is really a time to update your programming. I was on a phone call with a friend. We had been having some communication issues, so we hopped on a FaceTime to talk about it. And the way that I described how I was feeling was like, at a certain point in my childhood, and see if you resonate with this, right? Because that Gemini archetype really comes out in us around the age of 5.5 to 7 or so. It's when we start thinking our own way. It's when we start having our own interesting thoughts. Our own little persona comes out. And then it's like, how did your caretakers take that? Did they honor and respect and love and encourage that authentic version of you that's coming out? Or did they start putting you into laneways that they were comfortable with, or calling you weird, or dismissing you, or telling you to be quiet, or saying, I know better, right? That will contract or expand your Gemini avatar, your authentic expression. So with this phone call with my friend, I was explaining how when I was younger, I had a lot of strong opinions coming in. Adults that felt they knew better than me, that I was always wrong and they were always right, and I would never be as smart as them. I just had very ego driven type adults around me. So as a little kid, I thought I learned, oh, there's no point in sharing, or I had to fight to get a word in, right? Because there was a stronger opinion at hand. So I built this kind of defense system where whenever these strong opinions came in, that ultimately made my Gemini, my avatar self, feel small, it would right away reject and repel. I explained it like an iron dome that had been programmed to repel drone and rocket strikes, right? Because when someone comes in and acts like they're direct and strong and bossy, then I just think, oh, there's something wrong with me. So that was my conditioning. And I have this very strong, empowered friend, and I can be triggered by the way she communicates. And I explained it how, I know you're a safe person. I know you're a bird and not a drone, but my iron dome, my defense system, doesn't know the difference, right? And so it's protecting me against everything, even the beautiful things. And so what I'm focusing on, and this is what the Gemini new moon is for, is like the personal upgrade. So I said, I got to get a programmer in to update the iron dome and say, and distinguish between organic matter, birds, and inorganic missiles, right? And eventually, maybe I won't have to have a defense system at all. That's the goal. But that's a really great example of what we do in Gemini system. We come back home to ourselves, and yeah, we usually have a lot of interactions. You might find that you're having interactions with older friends, repeating friends from childhood, that, or even siblings at this time, because it's coming in to show you the version that you were and the programming that you had and the version now as you're interacting, and how are you different. And then you come home to yourself at the end of the day, because Gemini is that private sign that comes home and says, okay, what do I need to upgrade or adapt or reprogram based on who I am now, how this avatar has developed new skills. It's like in a video game, you start with like the weakest little avatar that has like maybe one superpower, but as you go through life, you start collecting different weapons and powers, and you get to bring on maybe even new outfits or change that avatar's hair color or something. So of course you would always want to be updating it to be like the most fun or the greatest version of itself. Self-expression, we know this well through video games, where we want that avatar to feel like this cool character. Hello, this is Gemini, this is us. It's like, you are that cool character, right? You might even find like you start to dress different, or you start to give yourself more permission to authentically express through poetry or written word or your clothes or your hobbies, whatever it is, right? But this is the time of year that we come home to ourselves and say, okay, what upgrades are being asked of me now during Gemini season that I maybe haven't done for many years, and certainly use the past 2 weeks and what came up during that Sagittarius full moon as your like fire, as your information to glean what wants to change here in this Gemini, right? And so we come back to the new moon. I've been talking a lot about upgrades, right? Upgrades, programming, changing. And it's funny, like, there, as I say, like, what wants to change about you? I hear this little voice saying, like, no one needs to change. We don't need to fix ourselves. It's not that. It's that Gemini loves to change, right? To me, as a strong Gemini, I'm like, I thrive off of it. I'm like, okay, I'm excited. When's the next thing? I have to actually learn to change less, right? So change isn't changing yourself on a Gemini layer, is superficial change in like the best way possible, right? It's all of the small little upgrades. It can even be thought of as like doing front end development on a website. You're not changing the offerings, you're not changing the mission statement, but you're upgrading how it presents to appeal to new clients or new people that are more aligned, fresher colors that reflect your energy now compared to what you chose last winter, for example, right? So change, when it comes to Gemini, this wise, mutable sign, is a very good and exciting thing. So during Gemini season right now and Gemini new moon, let's give ourselves permission to change. Especially if you're a fixed sign, if you have a lot of fixed energy, it's like hard to change. And Gemini season is a really good time to start practicing change. Being non-attached to the change, throwing out possibilities on something that you want in your life and saying, here's all the ways that I might want to go about getting it, and putting them down on paper and not taking action on them, but just allowing them to be, right? Trying on new ways of expressing yourself, trying out being a bit more spontaneous, like in our on our monthly Cosmic Wisdom circle, which you can join, by the way, for free if you do the Cosmic Wisdom 101 course all year, every month, or for a low price if you just want to join as one-offs. There's a member who does incredible tarot readings, and I asked her, can you do a tarot reading at the end of the call for us? Which is like, yeah. And I was like, no, now, like spontaneously, we want it now. Not when you have time to prepare, right? And that's that Gemini energy. Is like, sure, why not? Let me just hop on and do it. And if that makes you kind of contract, you might have wounds to your Gemini energy. You might be really stronger in other areas. So practicing changing, practicing spontaneity, upgrading the system, loving the avatar, honoring the avatar, right? While also thinking about upgrades and changes and being spontaneous with what you want to do and practicing a little bit of, fun on earth, flirting with life, throwing things up in the air and seeing what happens. And then I'm going to give you all a personal challenge for this Gemini new moon. And this has to do with other things that are going on in the sky and the kind of seeding energy of this new moon. Now, as I described, Gemini does live down here on this kind of like underground part of the chart, right? So if we're looking at the zodiac chart, we have the sun up here overhead. We've got flowers growing. This can be a tree. We've got flowers growing, right? We've got potato bushes and abundant things. But down here is where the roots are, right? And deep down here is where the bulbs are, or the seeds that are kind of planted still in the dark. And they're not necessarily ready to start sprouting yet. So that's the beauty of Gemini. We don't often think about Gemini as a darker, kind of more like seeding, waiting type energy. But in the nature of its mutability, being able to seed many, 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 many ideas and be unattached to which one takes root is a really beautiful quality of Gemini. And so it's kind of like, it reminds me of squirrels, because I feed the squirrels on my patio so many peanuts and things, not just peanuts, because just peanuts is unhealthy for them. But they take all of them, like way more than what they need, and they're just burying them all over town. And so there's some crazy percentage, like 80% of the things that squirrels bury, they'll never remember where they are and they'll never get dug up again. But in that, how many of those things are taking root and turning into acorn trees or oak trees? Or I haven't seen many peanut bushes around, but who knows, maybe they'll start popping up around here soon. Right? It's this beautiful, natural detachment to what you're planting. And the nature of leaving it planted and letting it sit underground in the dark, it gets you comfortable with the fact that these seeds and these ideas, they do have to spend time in the dark to be able to become and to flourish in their own natural timing. Okay. So it also reminds me, one more example, chanting mantras, seed mantras, right? If you do any kind of chanting, you're saying the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And the way that the yogis would describe this is that every time you say a mantra, it's like sending a seed out of your vibration, out of your mouth into the world. And out of all these seeds that go, some land on roofs, some get blown across the street, some land in a puddle, but some of them take root. And that's why we do it over and over and over. And Gemini is abundant in rooting and planting and seeding and sending out ideas and this and that, without attachment to which of those seeds take root. When you start to attach and want certain things and plans and dreams to root in, then you're living outside of your body. You're projecting into a future that will never take part. If you can see it in your mind, it's not going to happen that way. So you can guarantee whatever you're dreaming of, right? You might make something like it happen with forced manifestation, but it won't be its own true creation because it was forced, right? So, and most of them won't even take root. You have to put a lot of energy, right? Think about it. I have to chant, and then I have to follow that seed and find it because it landed on the sidewalk, and then I have to take it home, and then I have to give it moisture and wait for it to germinate. And like, that's so much energy to force that one seed to grow, whereas I could just keep chanting and chanting and not know where they grow, but have faith that they're growing, right? That's the beauty of Gemini archetype. So if I get back to the homework or the challenge for you, it's to plant some seeds this Gemini season. Now, I want these to be practical things that you really want to happen in your life. Okay, plant them. Plant the idea. So for me, I already know what mine is, and it's to do season 2 of my True Knowing course, Becoming a Quantum Reader, in the fall. I've already planted the seed. It's in my book, and that's it. See, I'll prove it. I wrote it right there. See, it's in my book. That's as much as I'm going to do with it during this Gemini new moon. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to take action on it. I'm not going to advertise it. I'm not even going to start working on my website. I just planted it. And then I want to go out and I want to trust and I want to let go and I want to continue working on this avatar, because the reality is that the best version of me is going to do that work the best when it happens. And I can't force when I become the best version of me, and I can't force when that course happens. I can just keep flowing and feeling into this beautiful moment of, yes, things are coming together and it's flowing and there it is. And it might never happen, and it might happen exactly on the date that I wrote that I want to start. So my challenge to you is to plant seeds, plant a big seed, plant a bunch of little seeds, and then let go of that seed and continue to live your life. And every time that you think of it, you think the best way to water that seed is to water the avatar, to make the upgrades, to honor this part of me, and to start to express, get into my authentic expression and do something that makes me feel silly or goofy or just like me every day, right? That's the personal upgrade. That's how to get there and access that. Well, at the same time, putting potential into this future dream, right? Gemini, again, still bringing in insight and information and wanting to share and wanting to express and wanting to teach. So that is my somewhat brief cosmic wisdom update for you. Gemini new moon, please go and take the Cosmic Wisdom 101 course. I created it so that you can speak the same language as me. And I know it works because I've been doing and teaching for years. And just last night, a student of the course said it clicks, it lands, it all makes everything make sense. And I know that's my gift as a authentic Gemini avatar teacher is, in my own personal chart, my own sun is right here. My consciousness is here, rooted at the very bottom of this chart. Yes, I'm a spiritual teacher. Yes, I'm a guide. However, my soul dictated with this placement that everything I do has to be rooted and grounded in a very human experience. And that's how I make astrology accessible to people, and make it make sense and offer us all this system of true harmony is what we're doing at the end of the day. We are learning to find the present moment. We're learning to look at these benevolent planets and this harmonious system and to decode and understand it, to see exactly what I should be focusing on right now, and then ground into my highest expression, my personal self, and then everything else comes from that. So that's all for now. We'll maybe see you in 2 weeks and maybe not.